The stars looked different when you knew you were a slave. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal of the observation window and watched the hegemony. Patrol ships drift past like metal sharks in the endless black. 3,000 years of peace, they called it, but Jake had started to wonder what kind of peace required so many warships. The cargo vessel New Frontier hummed beneath his feet as it carried another load of rare minerals from the outer rim worlds. 43 human souls aboard this ship, all of them doing what humans had done for centuries in this galaxy, hauling cargo from one world to another like pack animals. The other species had prettier names for it, but Jake knew what they really thought. Humans were beasts of burden, nothing more, Amy Patterson called from the bridge, her voice carrying that edge it always had when dealing with hegemony communications. Jake pushed himself away from the window and walked through the narrow corridors of his ship. The New Frontier was old but reliable, patched and repatched by Danny Brooks, who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. The bridge was small and cramped, designed for function rather than comfort. Amy stood at the communications station, her blonde hair pulled back in regulation style. Danny worked at the engineering console, his young face serious as he monitored the ship's systems. Rick Taylor sat at navigation, plotting their course through the approved shipping lanes that all human vessels were required to follow. The holographic display flickered to life and Admiral Thrix appeared, his insectoid features sharp and angular. The alien's mandibles clicked as he spoke, a sound that always made Jake's skin crawl. The Admiral's 4 eyes focused on Jake with what might have been amusement or contempt. Human vessel New Frontier, you are to alter your course immediately. To Sector 7 Alpha, a Nexari processing station has gone dark and your species has been selected for investigation duties. Jake felt his jaw tighten but kept his voice level. Understood, Admiral. What kind of investigation are we talking about? The processing station stopped transmitting 6 hours ago. The Nexari are crystalline beings who can survive in hard vacuum, so equipment failure is unlikely. You will dock with the station and determine what has occurred. The transmission ended without ceremony, leaving Jake staring at the empty space where the Admiral's image had been. Around him, his crew exchanged glances. They all knew what investigation meant when it came to human crews. It meant going into dangerous situations that other species were too valuable to risk. Danny looked up from his console. Captain, the Nexari processing stations are supposed to be automated. Why would one just go dark? That's what we're going to find out, Jake replied, though he had a bad feeling about the whole situation. The hegemony never sent humans to investigate anything unless they expected casualties. Amy began plotting the course change while Rick contacted the other human vessels in their convoy. The cargo hauler Meridian under Captain Sharon Wells was being diverted to investigate a missing colony. The transport ship Horizon's Edge, commanded by Captain Paul Martinez, was ordered to the front lines where strange beings from dark space had been testing hegemony borders. Jake watched the stars wheel around as the New Frontier changed course. In the distance, he could see the running lights of other human ships, all of them changing direction to follow orders they had no choice but to obey. The hegemony had made it clear long ago that disobedience meant death, not just for the crew involved but for their families back on the human worlds. The journey to Sector 7 Alpha took 18 hours. Jake spent most of that time reviewing what little information they had about Nexari technology. The crystalline beings were living computers, processing vast amounts of data for the hegemony's administrative systems. Their stations were marvels of engineering, grown rather than built, with crystalline walls that could channel energy and information in ways human technology couldn't match. Lisa Coleman, the ship's navigator, found Jake in his quarters studying the schematics. She was a small woman with dark hair and quick eyes, one of the best navigators in the human fleet. Captain, something's been bothering me about this mission. What's that? The Nexari don't just go dark. Their crystal structures are designed to last for millions of years. Even if every Nexari on the station died, the automated systems should still be functioning. Jake set down the datapad and looked at her. You think something destroyed the station? I think something destroyed the Nexari and left the station intact. The question is what and why. As they approached Sector 7 Alpha, the Nexari processing station came into view. It was beautiful in its alien way, a massive crystalline structure that looked like a flower blooming in space. The faceted surfaces that should have been glowing with internal light were dark and cold. Danny's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I'm reading no energy signatures from the station." Whatever happened, it was thorough. Jake gathered his away team in the shuttle bay. Amy would stay on the bridge to coordinate with the other human vessels that were reporting similar strange assignments. Danny would come with them to examine the station's systems. Rick would handle communications, and Lisa would help navigate the station's crystalline passages. The shuttle docked with the station's main access port without incident. The airlock cycled, and Jake's team stepped into the eerily quiet corridors of the Nexari facility. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows through the crystal walls, making everything look like the inside of a frozen rainbow. Their footsteps echoed in the hollow passages as they made their way toward the central processing core. Jake had been on Nexari stations before, and they were usually filled with the harmonic resonance of the crystalline beings' communications. Now there was only silence. They found the first evidence of what had happened in the side chamber. Scorch. Marks on the crystal walls suggested some kind of energy weapon had been used. But there were no bodies, no debris, nothing to indicate what had happened to the Nexari who had lived and worked here. Danny ran his scanner over the damaged sections. "Captain, these burn patterns are consistent with human plasma weapons." "But that's impossible. We don't have access to military-grade equipment." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's cold air. "Keep scanning. I want to know what happened here." As they moved deeper into the station, the signs of violence became more apparent. Entire sections had been sealed off, their crystal doors fused shut. The few automated systems that were still functioning showed signs of tampering, as if someone had been trying to extract information from the station's memory banks. It was Lisa who found the central processing core, and what waited for them there. Her scream echoed through the crystalline corridors, bringing Jake and the others running. What they found made Jake's blood turn to ice in his veins. The processing core was filled with human remains. The processing core stretched out before them like a cathedral of death. Human bodies were connected to the crystalline walls by cables and neural interfaces, their faces frozen in expressions of agony. Some wore the uniforms of cargo crews, others the simple clothes of colonists. All of them had the same terrible marks where alien technology had been forced into their skulls. Danny Brooks stepped forward, his scanner trembling in his hands. "Captain, these people have been dead for weeks. The neural interfaces are still active, drawing power from their brain tissue even after death." Jake Morrison forced himself to look closer at the bodies. He recognized some of the uniforms, the patches and insignia of human cargo fleets. These were crews just like his own, people who had followed orders and trusted the hegemony to keep them safe. "They were using humans as living computers," Lisa Coleman whispered, her voice barely audible. "Plugging people into their processing systems and burning out their brains for computational power." Rick Taylor worked frantically at a nearby console, his hands shaking as he tried to access the station's records. "Captain, the data logs showed dozens of human ships docking here over the past 6 months. They were told they were delivering supplies or undergoing routine maintenance." Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. The hegemony had been feeding human crews to alien technology, telling them they were performing standard duties, while actually using them as organic processors. The beautiful crystalline station was nothing more than a slaughterhouse disguised as a technological marvel. "How many?" Jake asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. 47 ships, Rick replied, his voice cracking. "Over 2,000 people." The communications array suddenly crackled to life. Voices filled the chamber, other human crews reporting similar discoveries across the galaxy. Captain Sharon Wells was broadcasting from the missing colony, her voice tight with fury and horror. "The entire settlement is gone," Sharon's voice echoed through the crystal walls. "We found processing facilities underground, thousands of humans connected to alien machinery. They were harvesting genetic material, using human DNA to create enhanced soldiers for their war efforts. More voices joined the transmission. Captain Paul Martinez reported from the front lines where humans were being used as expendable shock troops against the mysterious beings from dark space. Captain Kevin Turner had found evidence of human children being raised in laboratory conditions, their unique adaptability being studied and exploited. Jake listened to the reports with growing rage. Across the galaxy, human crews were discovering the same terrible truth. They were not citizens of the hegemony, not even valued workers. They were livestock, bred and maintained for the convenience of alien species who saw them as nothing more than useful tools. Danny had moved deeper into the processing core, examining the neural interfaces with the focused intensity he brought to all technical problems. Captain, I think I understand how this works. The Nexari technology is designed to interface with crystalline minds, but human brains are flexible enough to adapt. We can connect to their systems in ways they never intended. What are you saying? Jake asked. I'm saying we've been plugging into their networks every time they use us as processors. We could learn to control their systems instead of just serving them. Lisa looked up from where she had been examining one of the interface stations. The neural pathways are still active. If we could reverse the process, we might be able to access their data networks without them knowing. Jake felt a plan beginning to form in his mind. The hegemony had made a crucial mistake in their calculations. They had assumed that humans would remain docile as long as they were kept ignorant of their true situation. But humans had evolved on a world where survival required constant adaptation and the ability to turn any situation to their advantage. Rick, can you patch me through to every human vessel in the sector? Jake asked. Already working on it, Captain. We have secure channels to 47 ships and growing. Within hours, Jake's message had spread through the human fleet like wildfire. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Captains who had spent years following orders without question were now ready to fight back. But they needed more than anger. They needed a plan. It was during a secret meeting in the New Frontiers cargo bay that Lisa Coleman proposed the strategy that would change everything. Her image appeared on holographic displays throughout the gathered fleet, her voice calm and determined. We cannot fight them directly, she said. They have better ships, superior weapons, and they outnumber us 1,000 to 1. But we have something they do not understand. Captain Wells leaned forward on her transmission. What's that? We are from a death world. We do not just adapt to survive, we thrive in conditions that would kill any other species. And we have been studying their technology for 300 years while they used us as living tools. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The hegemony had grown complacent, relying on their technological superiority and rigid social hierarchies. They had forgotten that humans were the only species to evolve on a world where survival required constant innovation, cooperation, and the ability to turn any environment into a weapon. Danny Brooks began coordinating with other human engineers, sharing modifications that had been deemed unauthorized by hegemony standards. These were small changes, improvements that human crews had developed over the centuries to make their ships more efficient and reliable. Individually, they seemed harmless. Together, they represented a level of technological adaptation that the hegemony had never imagined. Amy Patterson linked up with other communications officers, creating a network that could operate undetected through the hegemony's own systems. Humans had been maintaining and repairing alien communication networks for generations, learning every detail of their operation. Now that knowledge would be turned against their oppressors, but the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Chief Medical Officer Susan Harper aboard the Meridian had been studying the alien technology used in human processing. She had discovered that the same neural interfaces that allowed aliens to use human brains as computers could be reversed, allowing humans to directly interface with and control alien systems. Every time they plugged us into their networks, we were learning, she explained to the gathered captains. I can teach others how to establish permanent connections. We can become ghosts in their machines, controlling their technology from the inside. The hegemony had spent centuries building a galaxy-spanning empire based on the principle that each species had a predetermined role in the cosmic order. They had created a system where humans were the lowest caste, useful only for manual labor and dangerous tasks. But they had never considered what would happen if humans decided to reject that role entirely. Jake looked around at the faces of his crew, at the determined expressions of captains across the fleet. These were people who had spent their lives following orders, accepting their place in the galactic hierarchy. But the discovery of the processing cores had changed everything. The hegemony had revealed their true nature, and humans were finally ready to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could really do. The rebellion would not begin with a battle or a declaration of war. It would begin with a whisper, spreading through the networks the hegemony had built to control them. And when that whisper became a roar, the galaxy would learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe was not a weapon or a warship, but a species that refused to stay in its assigned place. The network spread faster than anyone had imagined possible. Within 3 days, Jake Morrison's message had reached human crews in 47 different sectors. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, transport ships, and even the few humans who worked on alien stations all received the same encoded transmission hidden in routine maintenance reports. Susan Harper worked around the clock aboard the Meridian, teaching other medical officers how to reverse the neural interfaces that had been used to enslave their people. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she demonstrated the procedure on a volunteer from Captain Wells' crew. The neural connection cables that had once drained human minds now carried human thoughts into alien systems. The key is not to fight their technology, Susan explained to the gathered medical staff through secured channels. We have to become part of it. Human brains are more adaptable than any other species in the galaxy. We can learn to think like their machines while keeping our humanity. Danny Brooks had gathered every human engineer in the fleet into a secret technical council. They shared blueprints and modifications that had been hidden from hegemony inspectors for generations. Small improvements to engines, weapon systems, and shields that individually seemed harmless but together represented a complete transformation of human capabilities. They never let us modify our ships beyond basic repairs, Danny told his fellow engineers. But we've been doing it anyway, hiding our improvements where they couldn't see them. Every human vessel in the fleet is more advanced than the hegemony realizes. The modifications had been necessary for survival. Human ships were given the oldest equipment, the most dangerous routes, and the least maintenance support. Over the centuries, human crews had learned to improvise, adapt, and improve their vessels in ways that kept them alive in situations that would have destroyed other species. Amy Patterson coordinated the communications network that connected human crews across the galaxy. She had spent years learning the patterns of hegemony transmissions, understanding how their information systems worked. Now she used that knowledge to create hidden channels that could carry messages without detection. We're not just talking to each other anymore, Amy reported to Jake during one of their secret meetings. We're accessing their administrative networks, their shipping schedules, their military communications. We know more about hegemony operations than most of their own commanders. The plan was taking shape across dozens of star systems. Human crews were positioning themselves at critical points throughout the galaxy, using their assigned duties as cover for strategic placement. Cargo ships moved into position near major hegemony installations. Transport vessels carried hidden equipment to human colonies. Mining ships gathered resources that would be needed for the coming conflict. Captain Paul Martinez had been assigned to the front lines where beings from dark space were testing hegemony borders. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, had been equipped with Susan Harper's neural interface modifications. Paul and his crew were learning to control alien weapon systems through direct mental connection, turning the hegemony's own technology against them. The aliens from dark space aren't our enemies, Paul reported during a secure transmission. They're refugees fleeing from something even worse. The hegemony has been using humans as expendable troops to fight people who just want to survive. Captain, Kevin Turner had discovered something equally disturbing at the mining operation where he had been stationed. The rare minerals that humans had been extracting for centuries were not being used for construction or manufacturing. They were being processed into weapons designed specifically to kill humans, stored in armories throughout hegemony space. They've been planning this for generations, Kevin told the assembled captains. Building weapons that target human biology, creating systems designed to control us. They knew we would eventually discover the truth, and they were ready to wipe us out when we did. Lisa Coleman had become the architect of the rebellion's most crucial element. Her skills as a navigator were being used to map every critical system in the hegemony's network. Communication relays, data processing centers, military command posts, and administrative facilities all fell under her analysis. Information is their weakness, Lisa explained to the gathered crew of the New Frontier. The hegemony rules through control of data. They decide what each species knows, what they believe, how they interact with each other. If we can control their information networks, we can control their empire. The modifications that Danny and his fellow engineers had developed were being installed throughout the human fleet. Weapons that appeared to be standard issue were actually far more powerful than hegemony specifications. Engines that seemed to match alien designs could actually outrun most hegemony patrol ships. Shields that looked like basic protective systems could withstand attacks that would destroy alien vessels. But the most important modification was invisible to hegemony scanners. Every human ship now carried Susan Harper's neural interface technology, allowing entire crews to connect directly to alien systems. Humans could pilot alien ships, operate alien weapons, and access alien databases with the same ease they showed when working with their own technology. The hegemony had made a fundamental error in their understanding of human nature. They had assumed that humans would remain divided, that competition and conflict would prevent them from working together effectively. But humans had evolved as pack hunters, creatures who survived through cooperation and shared knowledge. The discovery of their enslavement had united them in a way that nothing else could. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Frontier, watching the stars wheel past as his ship moved into position for the final phase of the plan. Around him, his crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had found their purpose. Amy coordinated with other ships, Danny monitored the modified systems. Rick maintained communications with the growing network of human vessels. "Captain," Lisa called from her station, "we're receiving confirmation from all sectors. Every human. Crews in position and ready to proceed." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of what they were about to attempt. In less than 6 hours, 47 human ships would simultaneously begin operations that would either free their people or destroy them all. The hegemony had superior numbers, better weapons, and 3,000 years of military experience. But they had never faced an enemy that could think like their machines. While fighting like animals from a death world, the rebellion was no longer a dream or a desperate hope. It was about to become reality, and the galaxy would never be the same. The humans had learned to use the hegemony's own strength against them, turning their technological superiority into a weapon that could destroy the empire from within. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy what happened when a species refused to accept their assigned place in the cosmic order. The rebellion began exactly as planned, not with explosions or battles, but with silence. Across 17 sectors, human crews simultaneously activated their neural interfaces and slipped into the hegemony's data networks like ghosts in the machine. The alien empire's own communication systems became the weapon that would destroy them. Captain. Jake Morrison felt the neural connection take hold as the interface cables touched his skull. The sensation was strange at first, like having another person's thoughts mixed with his own. But gradually he began to understand the patterns of data flowing through the hegemony's networks. Information streams that carried orders, supply requests, and status reports suddenly made sense to his human brain. "I'm in their central command system," Jake reported to his crew, his voice carrying an odd echo as he spoke through both his mouth and the alien communication network. Amy, begin the data extraction. Lisa, start mapping their fleet positions. Danny, prepare to take control of their automated defenses. The new frontier had become more than a cargo ship. It was now a command center for the most daring operation in galactic history. Every human vessel in the rebellion was connected through the hegemony's own networks, sharing information and coordinating actions faster than the alien empire could. Respond. Captain Sharon Wells had positioned the Meridian near the hegemony's main administrative center on Vorthan Prime. Her crew had spent days infiltrating the planet's information systems, learning the locations of every important facility and the identities of every key official. Now they began broadcasting the truth about human enslavement to every species in the galaxy. This is Captain Wells of the Human Liberation Fleet. Her voice echoed through communication networks that reached billions of beings. For 3,000 years, the hegemony has told you that peace required sacrifice. They never told you that the sacrifice was always made by others. The evidence flowed through the networks like a digital tsunami. Video recordings of human processing facilities. Documents detailing genetic experiments. Financial records showing how human labor had funded the hegemony's expansion. Species that had believed themselves to be willing partners in the Galactic Empire suddenly realized they had been complicit in genocide. Captain Paul Martinez had moved the Horizon's Edge into position near the hegemony's main battle fleet. His crew had spent weeks learning to control alien weapon systems through their neural interfaces. Now they prepared to demonstrate why humans were called Deathworlders. Hegemony Command, this is Captain Martinez. Paul's voice carried across the fleet's communication channels. You have 30 seconds to surrender your vessels before we show you what happens when you underestimate a species from a death world. Admiral. Thrix's response came immediately, his mandibles clicking with what sounded like amusement. Captain Martinez, humans are cargo haulers and manual laborers. You have no weapons capable of threatening hegemony vessels. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. Paul smiled, though the alien commander could not see his expression. Admiral, you've been using us as living computers for centuries. Did you really think we wouldn't learn how your systems work? What happened next changed the course of galactic history. Every ship in the hegemony fleet simultaneously lost power as human crews, connected through neural interfaces, turned the alien vessel's own systems against them. Life support systems began failing on ships designed to sustain alien biology. Navigation computers started plotting courses into nearby stars. Weapon systems turned on their own vessels, but the humans had done something even more devastating. They had opened every communication channel in the galaxy, broadcasting the truth about the hegemony's crimes to every species, every world, every being capable of receiving a signal. The Empire's own propaganda networks carried the evidence of their oppression to the farthest corners of known space. Captain Kevin Turner had taken control of the mining operations processing facilities, using them to broadcast detailed information about the hegemony's weapons programs. The revelation that the Empire had been secretly developing tools specifically designed to exterminate humans sparked outrage among species that had considered themselves allies of the Empire. They didn't just enslave us, Kevin's voice carried across the networks. They planned to wipe us out entirely once we were no longer useful. And if they could do that to us, what makes you think your species is safe? The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Kaleri, who had been responsible for agricultural production, began shutting down food shipments to hegemony worlds. The Nexari, whose crystalline minds processed data for the Empire, refused to continue their work. Even the mathematical Vorthan, who had helped design the hegemony's rigid social hierarchy, calculated that the system was unsustainable. Lisa Coleman had been right about the hegemony's weakness. Their empire was built on control of information, and once that control was broken, the entire structure began to collapse. Species that had never questioned their assigned roles suddenly saw the truth about their situation. The hegemony had not created a peaceful galactic civilization, They had built a prison where each species served as both guard and prisoner. The alien fleet tried to respond to the human attack, but their ships were no longer under their control. Human crews, connected through neural interfaces, had become part of the alien vessel's operating systems. Every command the hegemony officers gave was countered by human operators who understood the technology better than its creators. Danny Brooks had taken control of the hegemony's automated defense systems, turning orbital weapons platforms against the Empire's own installations. Military bases that had enforced hegemony rule for millennia suddenly found themselves under attack by their own defenses. The beauty of their technology, Danny explained to his fellow engineers, is that it was designed to be controlled by a central authority. They never imagined that authority might be challenged from within. Amy Patterson coordinated the information warfare that accompanied the physical attacks. Every lie the hegemony had told, every crime they had committed, every species they had oppressed was revealed to the galaxy in devastating detail. The Empire's own communication networks carried the evidence that would destroy them. The rebellion had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. In less than 6 hours, the hegemony's control over 43 sectors had been broken. Their fleets were disabled, their communications compromised, their authority shattered. But more importantly, the truth had been revealed to every species in the galaxy. Jake Morrison watched the tactical displays on his bridge, as report after report confirmed the success of their operation. The hegemony was not just defeated, it was exposed. Every species in the galaxy now knew the truth about their oppression, and many were beginning to fight back. "Captain," Amy reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from hegemony commanders in 17 sectors. Their command structure is collapsing." Jake nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The rebellion had succeeded, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of humans had died in the processing facilities, and countless more had suffered under hegemony oppression. The victory was real, but it could not bring back the dead or undo the centuries of injustice. The Deathworlders had broken the rules, and in doing so, they had broken the chains that bound the galaxy. 5 years had passed since the day the Deathworlders broke the rules, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council of Free Species, watching representatives from hundreds of worlds take their seats. The rigid hierarchies of the hegemony had been replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history, a true democracy where every species had an equal voice. The hall itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Nexari crystal formations provided the structural framework, but they were enhanced by human engineering techniques that made them stronger and more flexible. Kaleri biotechnology created an atmosphere that could support multiple species simultaneously, while Vorthan mathematical precision ensured that every seat had perfect acoustics and visibility. Jake wore the simple blue uniform of the human diplomatic corps, a far cry from the cargo hauler outfit he had worn during the rebellion. He had been elected as the first human representative to the Galactic Council, though the position was temporary. The new government rotated leadership among species to ensure that no single group could dominate the others. "The Council recognizes Captain Morrison of the Human Federation," announced the current Council President, a tall Kaleri whose plant-like features glowed with soft bioluminescence. Jake stood and looked out at the assembled representatives. 5 years ago, many of these species had been enemies, locked in conflicts orchestrated by the hegemony to keep them divided. Now they worked together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that had seemed impossible under the old system. "Fellow beings," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics, "we gather today to commemorate not a victory in war, but a transformation of spirit. 5 years ago, humans broke the rules that had governed our galaxy for 3 millennia. But we did not break them through violence or conquest. We broke them by refusing to accept that any being should be considered less than another." The audience listened intently as Jake continued. "The hegemony told us that peace required hierarchy, that order demanded that some species serve others. They created a system where each race was assigned a role and forbidden from rising above it. But peace built on oppression is not peace at all, it is merely the silence of the enslaved. In the audience, Jake could see familiar faces. Captain Sharon Wells now headed the Interspecies Truth and Reconciliation Commission, working to heal the wounds left by centuries of hegemony rule. Captain Paul Martinez had become the first human to serve as a fleet commander in the new Galactic Defense Force, protecting the borders against external threats. While ensuring that no species was ever again used as expendable troops, Danny Brooks had founded the Galactic Institute of Cooperative Technology, where engineers from all species worked together to develop innovations that benefited everyone. The Institute's greatest achievement was the development of neural interface technology that allowed different species to share knowledge directly, creating a level of understanding that had never existed before. Amy Patterson now served as the Director of Interspecies Communications, overseeing the networks that connected every world in the galaxy. Under her guidance, the old propaganda systems had been replaced by open channels where truth could flow freely, making it impossible for any group to control information as the hegemony had done. Lisa Coleman had become the chief navigator for the Galactic Exploration Service, leading missions to discover new worlds and make contact with previously unknown species. Her work ensured that first contact would be based on equality and mutual respect rather than conquest and exploitation. The humans kept their promise, continued a Nexari representative, her crystalline voice resonating through the hall. They could have become the new rulers of the galaxy, but instead they chose to build something better. They showed us that strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. The transformation had not been easy. The collapse of the hegemony had left many worlds struggling to establish new governments and economic systems. Some species had initially resisted the changes, preferring the certainty of oppression to the uncertainty of freedom. But gradually, the benefits of cooperation had become clear to all. Trade flourished as species shared their unique capabilities freely. The Kalari's biological mastery helped terraform worlds that had been considered uninhabitable. Human adaptability and engineering skills improved technology across the galaxy. Nexari processing power enabled scientific discoveries that had been impossible under the old system of restricted knowledge. The concept of Deathworld had been redefined entirely. No longer did it refer to a place of danger and hardship, but to a crucible that forged strength, adaptability, and most importantly, the courage to stand against injustice. Other species began to study human history, learning from the struggles that had shaped their character. We have learned that every species has something valuable to contribute, Jake said, his voice growing stronger. The hegemony saw diversity as a problem to be managed, but we have discovered it is our greatest strength. When beings from different worlds work together, they can achieve things that none could accomplish alone. The memorial gardens outside the assembly hall contained monuments to all those who had died under hegemony rule. The largest memorial was dedicated to the humans who had been used as living computers, their names carved into crystal formations that would last for millions of years. But there were also memorials to the Kalari who had been forced to poison their own worlds, the Nexari who had been shattered for refusing to process illegal orders, and the Vorthan who had been executed for questioning the mathematics of oppression. Susan Harper had established medical schools throughout the galaxy, teaching healing techniques that combined the best knowledge from all species. Her work had saved countless lives and helped former enemies learn to trust each other. The neural interface technology she had developed was now used not for control, but for understanding, allowing beings to share experiences and emotions across species barriers. The rebellion had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams, but its greatest achievement was not the defeat of the hegemony. It was the creation of a galaxy where every being had the right to reach their full potential, where diversity was celebrated rather than feared, and where the strong protected the weak instead of exploiting them. As the assembly concluded and representatives began to mingle, Jake reflected on how far they had all come. The humans had broken the rules not through violence or conquest, but through the simple act of refusing to accept their assigned place in the cosmic order. They had reminded the galaxy that freedom was not a privilege to be granted by others, but a right to be claimed by all. The day the Deathworlders broke, the rules had become the day the galaxy learned to dream again. And in that dream, every species had a place at the table, every voice had value, and every being had the right to reach for the stars. The revolution was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Building a better galaxy would take generations. But for the first time in 3,000 years, all species were working together toward that goal. The age of oppression was over, and the age of cooperation had begun.